So, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us again or for the very first time at our open house online series. So, this is the space where we get into dialogue about AI, its cultural implications, about today's digital transformation that we witness on a day-to-day basis, but of course also how these processes influence our work at museums. A short note for everyone who's joining for the first time. So these discussion series, Open House Online, they are part of our education program that accompanies the current temporary exhibition called Image and Power, Zooming into Zeppelin Photography. And with this exhibition, we tackle the questions: how do images actually serve power interests? How do they shape history? How do they manipulate us? And when do images actually turn into propaganda? And starting from our own archival material, historical images surrounding the Zeppelin, which of course we're most concerned about as the Zeppelin Museum, we trace the power of images into or in the exhibition right into our present time, and therefore especially into the digital realm. And this is why in these series we also take a close look at algorithms as well as artificial intelligence. And in today's open house, I think we will talk about images as intensely as we haven't before. So images will also be next to AI our starting point for discussion, and we want to really tackle the basis of this connection. So the title of today's discussion is AI and images by AI between power, agency, and future. So not only do we want to take a look at the power of AI generated images, but rather also at the wide range of ideas about AI itself, which are currently circulating. So how do these imaginations actually influence our relationship with these new technologies? And when dealing with AI images, to whom do we actually ascribe power or agency? Is it the humans? Is it the platforms? Or is it the AI systems themselves? And so, without further ado, it gives me a really great pleasure to introduce today's experts. Since Maud is going to start with her impulse, I would also like to start with her introduction. With us is Dr. Maud van Leer. She's a philosopher of agency, AI, and science. She did her PhD at the University of Constance on artificial agency, and she also quite recently published her dissertation, Modeling the Artificial Agent. So that would be the first book recommendation of the day, where she develops conceptual tools to approach AI systems as potential agents. And so she just started as a postdoc at the Institute for Intelligent Systems and Robotics at the Sorbonne in Paris, where she will research autonomy in robots and the ethical ramifications of introducing such systems into society. So, really state-of-the-art research, quite exciting. We are really happy to have you here. Thank you very much, Maud. And with us is also Lucas Wild. He is Dr. Lucas Wild. He is a professor at the Department of Art and Media Studies at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim. So someone from Norway, someone in Paris. This is really an international panel today. He studied theater and media, Japanese and philosophy at the Friedrich Alexander University in Erlangen-Nuremberg and at the Gakugai University of Tokyo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. His dissertation was awarded the Roland Felske Award 2018, as well as the GIB Dissertation Award 2021 of the Society for the Interdisciplinary Study of Pictures. And Lucas is also the vice president of the German Society for Comic Studies. So images have accompanied you quite for a while now. And we are really excited also to have you here. This is the second book recommendation because Lucas also edited and published quite recently the book AI Aesthetics, AI Generated Images Between Artistics and Aesthetics, together with Jan-Noel Toon. So we are really pleased to have you both here. To everyone present, please feel free to post your questions in the chat, even also during the talks. And later when we start the discussion, please also feel free to join us. There are no wrong questions. We are really happy and we would like you to really use the space and to use the expertise that we have here. And with that, I'm going to I'm going to start sharing my screen, but with your presentation, Maud. And I would say the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. So I had some troubles with sharing my screen, so Tabea will take over. Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm very happy to be here. I will say a bit more about how the image of AI, how it plays a role in my work. But before doing so, I thought it would be interesting to first say a bit more about why we philosophers are actually interested in AI. And I thought of three more general reasons, but there are, of course, many more. And please, next slide. Yes. Okay. So first reason why we philosophers are interested in AI is because AI systems can often, by now, especially the more complex ones, do things that we can do as well, and that are quite complex behaviors. Things that remind us of what it means to be agentive, creative, conscious. They present us with a kind of behavior that makes it seem as if they can be moral, rational, etc. And as philosophers, what this means for us is that we, on the one hand, can use AI systems to kind of test whether our hypotheses about what kind of mechanisms in us make us capable of producing this behavior, but also on the other hand that these kind of systems kind of challenge our notions of what it means to be creative, to have these kind of capacities, and challenge us to take a new look at how we have defined these concepts for us ourselves, and see whether maybe we should change them and have a different perspective on them. Please, next slide. Another reason why we are interested is exactly because they are not like us. So, in some way, AI systems kind of offer us the possibility to go beyond what we can do. But if we go beyond, there are questions to be asked about how far can and should we go? To what extent can we still understand what these systems show us, what they can do? And how will what they then do affect our world? So this is another reason. And then please, the next slide for the third. Finally, as you all know, AI systems are becoming more and more part of society, either in the role of a tool or really as a participant. And this also brings us with new questions. If they are tools and they kind of are being used in our work in our daily life, how does that affect how we work, how we interact with each other, what we can know? But also, if they are going to be participants, what kind of participant, what kind of roles should they play? If something goes wrong, who bears responsibility? How should we represent them, really as systems or as something that represents certain parts of society, that represents the human? These are all questions that come up when we kind of integrate these AI systems in our society. And maybe highlight with something that is not often discussed in the literature, but if we have AI as part of our society, we should also take into account that there are huge material costs. So for us to all have this electric car might mean that in a third world country, resources are being exploited, and these are also questions that for philosophers and many others now become important. In my work, on the next slide, uh, yeah, in my work, I focus on a specific question, namely what it means for AI systems to be agents. In philosophy, an agent is any kind of system that can do things that are up to it, that is somehow has some kind of authenticity in what it does, some kind of active involvement. And as you by all know, in the last few years, this term of AI agent has become more and more in use. But it is not exactly what we mean by agent in philosophy, even though it bears distinctive markers. So what I kind of did during my dissertation is ask the question, okay, under what conditions can we say that there can be this agent in artificial form that is similar to the kind of agent that we talk about in philosophy? Next slide, please. So by now we have many of these systems out there, and the question is, okay, what then counts as such an agent? So what we often picture is this kind of little robot to the right, but what actually usually functions as a kind of agent are more these processors in the middle that are connected to all these different systems. So what we kind of have to wonder is if we have an agent or if we have agentic behavior, who is doing this behavior? What does it consist of? And how can we picture it? And then please, next slide. Because what is important is kind of to highlight why we should care in the first place. Well, first of all, if these systems are not agents, but we treat them as agents, this has consequences in case something goes wrong. We respond very differently to an agent misbehaving versus a machine malfunctioning. Also, if they are agents, but not very complex agents, like, for example, babies or animals, then even if they can kind of be if they are aware of what they are doing, maybe they cannot take full responsibility. I'm there for what they do. Also, what we see now is that people form different kind of relationships with AI systems, and in our relationships with agents, we expect a certain kind of reciprocity. I can never pronounce it, but a kind of um, return of what we give to this other system. And if AI systems cannot really do this, then maybe we provide them with information that they cannot really be trusted with. And this is why this question is important too. And finally, if we present them as certain agents, then the way that we treat them might have consequences as well for how we treat similar agents. So if we give our AI assistants a female voice, then this might continue this image of women in assisting roles, in kind of subordinate roles. Next slide, please. So what I did, I looked at the artificial agent, and in this research, it was really important to think about the image that we have of AI. This is because arguably there is not such an artificial agent yet. So I had to kind of hypothesize what it could be. It would be different from living agents. So we kind of have to, maybe they have features from artificial agents, but not necessarily all of them. So in some way, we need to create a new kind of image, one that doesn't exist yet. There are also many different kind of notions of what an agent can be. Think of groups, animals, humans, maybe also systems. There are many different kind of definitions out there, and maybe some fit in some way to the artificial agent, but not in others. And in my work, I try to kind of puzzle to bring them all together. And what's also important is that for particular image of AI, one draws particular conclusions about whether an AI system can be such an agent. So it matters what image we choose. So during my dissertation, I used many of these kind of images, but I want to highlight two before I give the floor to Lucas. The first one I used, yes, next slide, please. The first image I used was the image of fungi and the various kind of symbiosis relations that they can enter into to kind of make sense of what kind of AI systems can be out there. Because in our conversations, we usually talk about AI in very general terms, kind of creating this image of AI as a united kind of system, as a clear thing that we can attribute properties to. But actually, when you look at AI systems, there are very many different variations out there. And I think with this analogy with guy who also kind of are dispersed, that are not as standard as humans and animals, we can come up with conceptual tools to categorize AI systems. And if you're interested, please read my thesis. And then in the next slide, this other image that I used was to draw a comparison between the monsters on the one hand and our fear of them and our fear of AI. Because there are these theories of what monsters are that kind of distinguish between different features of monsters. And I use these different features to show that many of these features AI systems have as well, and that we can thereby kind of couple different fears to different features, helping us to maybe do something about these fears and justify them, or sorry, to kind of check whether these fears are justified or maybe based on hype. So this is me, and then thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Maud, for the insights. Yeah, I really enjoyed immediately these images of is AI a fungus or fungi and the AI is the monster, because I think these two images they make clear how emotionally involved we are in these discussions when we talk about AI. And I think even with fungi, we very often use this word as when we try to think about different ways of how to reproduce knowledge. So maybe as an anti-image to the tree knowledge, where you have the hierarchy, so something that's evening out. So I think in the one hand, these discourses are very positive. On the other hand, just thinking about The Last of Us, for example, so these idea of apocalypses that are coming are also very often connected to the fungi that will overcome us, maybe because they are so connected and we as humans fail over and over again to really find ways to collaborate effectively. And maybe this is one of those fears that then become graspable. What happens when there are suddenly systems that actually do work and point out to us where our failures are in living together? So this already resonated with me, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it further with you. But before that, I'm also really happy that Lucas is now going to share his presentation and start his impulse. So the floor is yours, dear Lucas.
Thank you, Tabea. Thank you so much. And also to Maud for the wonderful opening. I really look forward to reading that book. Thanks for sharing it with us. Also had to think of The Last of Us as this overlap between monsters and fungi, which seems to creep into popular culture by now. So it's not two distinct topics entirely. Can you see the presentation? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks again for having me. I love discussing these topics in an informal matter and formal matter because yeah, we have to learn so much from each other. I think it was exactly 3 years ago that these DALI popped up, and I I was so fascinated about that, and but also I'm not a computer scientist, right? So I realized I have to learn more about it, and then had the pleasure to kind of organize one of the first workshops about generative imagery in Tübingen, and the result was this publication. And since then, I keep learning more and more new things. The latest project is this book, AI Aesthetics, together with Jan-Noel Thon. And the disclaimer for this is that we try to approach, so what is AI aesthetics, with a very limited focus from media aesthetics, because we have to remind ourselves that what we call generative AI, right, is just a very, very small subset, and arguably not by far not the most important or dangerous subset of machine learning technologies if we think about automatic driving and image recognition, many other things. But we just looked specifically at AI generated images and thought, okay, from here let's take this approach from media aesthetics, film aesthetics, television aesthetics, what we know about that, what could be AI aesthetics then, and not even by trying up to come up with new terms, but just looking at the research that has actually been there in the 3 years since 2022, what are they investigated in? What's the starting point? What's the problem? And from there, of course, it all depends on how you understand media and how you understand aesthetics. And then we arrive at 6 different approaches where you start and where you want to go to. So you could start with different understandings of media and yeah, just as the very, very rough categorization, right? If you have an instrumental understanding of media, so it's an instrument to do something, and then you start with a use case that's already there, and now you investigate how do the perceivable properties of AI-generated images fit into that? How are they suitable or not suitable? In what contexts? When you start from a more actor network or actor media theory perspective, and we're not interested in specific use cases, but more these general properties and affordances of these networks. Then we look much more at the defaults that come from certain infrastructures, black boxes, and so on. And if we have this even broader view that media is kind of our mediated environment or the ecology where we live in, then we are interested in how the fact that we have much more AI images and videos circling around that influences all sorts of media, even like photography or hand-drawn media, because we will react to this new media environment one way or the other. So that's very, very different interests and starting points, even on the level of media. And in the same way, we can kind of go through different understanding of aesthetics, coming from more artistics or art, judgment, skill, connoisseurship. So yeah, can we apply discourses on creativity or originality to AI-generated output, authorship, also many things that Maud already mentioned. We can look at a more like yeah, formal perspective of aesthetics. So when is the form rather than the content highlighted to what degree, with or without style prompts? So when do these AI-generated images become more kind of transparent in the sense that their mediality does or does not become a focus in specific use contexts? Or this broadest understanding of aesthetic as aesthetics, so bodily perception, embodiment, how are affects remediated algorithmically on a perceptual level, not so much on in terms of communication, so more in a phenomenological sense, if you want. So this is like a very, very broad grid to show that what AI aesthetics is, or what it's interested in, what's asking, can have a really broad range of different trajectories. And from that, I kind of want to zoom out very, very far now and just throw in maybe 6 kind of hypotheses where we are at this moment, very different from 2022, maybe, and that's what we can discuss then. So it's yeah, with AI-generated images specifically, and maybe it doesn't apply to music so much, but maybe it does. So the first yeah, claim is we have all this the end of truth, right? Everything is different now because everything can be AI generated. But of course, I would say not so much is actually new about individual AI generated images, because we have Photoshop, we have CGI, and we have like 100 years ago manipulated photography, and on every individual image probably. With a bit skill and programs, you could do that with Photoshop um, 5 years ago, 10 years ago already. So that there's a bit of a red herring in the discussion, because on that level, not so much has probably changed. But the fact that it is so much more accessible, and we don't need such equipment, skill, education to generate these images. We have a much larger number of them. And this also changes and creates maybe new categories of images like accidental fakes, like the famous Balenciaga Pope that you probably know, that many people mistake for an actual image of the Pope. And the interesting thing here is that there was not any intent to deceive somebody, but apparently it was this construction worker from Chicago, and he just wanted to see a funny picture of the Pope. And now this had 100,000 views and likes and shares. And if this takes a lot of work in Photoshop, and you have to develop the skills to do that, right? We don't get these accidental fakes in the same way that we have them now, where these images pop up everywhere, and we're not talking so much about intention to deceive anymore, but that these questions pose themselves in very, very new ways. Third hypothesis is that these AI images are flat images in more than one sense. That's picking up a little bit on Roland Mayer, but also Evan Savaggio, that not only is what we see in them, it's not a simulated 3D space like in a video game, but it is a flat pixel canvas that shows probable combinations of pixels. Right, so there is no simulated 3D space behind that. To the interface, to the model, these are flat images, but also in the sense that they flatten all cultural, historical, political contexts where they come from in the database. So in Lion, we have billions of images, and we know by now that many of them contain highly problematic material and child pornography, violent images. Here, Eric here shows that this seemingly innocent archive picture probably draws on material from Holocaust survivors and Wehrmacht Nazi officers in the same way like it draws from Riverdale TV shows. And of course, we don't necessarily see that, and the number is probably not so significant of problematic images, but we have the feeling that there is a kind of contamination of everything because we cannot really trace it back. Where's this coming from? And normally we would carefully contextualize and safeguard this material, but this is all kind of flattened out into visual patterns that can be sold and are marketable. Contamination is maybe the next fourth kind of keyword I want to present here, because just in the last 1.5 years we have seen that the sheer number of AI generated images kind of seems to pollute the information ecosystem, that we have more and more, like our social media screens are over flooded with these found in the wild AI images where many people don't realize that this is AI generated. Maybe it's accidental again or not. We find these Google image searches, historical event like the Tiananmen Square massacre, where we have these selfies or actually existing historical footage and real people, or the baby peacock, and we get more and more AI content that's not marked as such because there's such a great number. And there's also the advantage, and because it is produced so quickly and so easily, that, for instance, if you look at the YouTube videos that are always on top, it's variations of AI generated content, because the algorithm are favorable towards accounts that produce much of content. And humans producing content always have the disadvantage, whether they do it with a camera and they edit it carefully or they produce it by hand, that they cannot produce content so much so quickly. So the 10 slide variations of crying babies and animals on something that just comes from AI platforms have this algorithmic advantage that also contributes to this maybe pollution of the image ecosystem, and that this gets worse and worse. And of course, AI images now also draw and AI images in the database, so we have this kind of circular loop that also might become a problem, or is a problem already. So this is another effect of this the sheer number and accessibility and speed with which they are generated. Again, not on the level of the individual image, but on the of the image ecosystem. five, at the moment at least, it seems that the acceptance or refusal of AI imagery is very much based on political judgment. So I think wherever we stand, it cannot be denied that especially right-wing and far-right extremist actors around the globe, from the AfD in Germany and Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Britain First, um, are really into AI-generated content. And of course, we could ask, is there also a kind of progressive left-wing utopian way to use AI imagery? But Alan Watkins published this quite influential article that there are, or there might be, at least at the current moment, some structural reason be, be, between this alignment, because, well, the way that AI imagery is created has all these damaging effect on the ecosystem, on the planet. It rids basically workers of their the value of their labor. And there are all these structural alignments that appeal more with the far right than with the left, so to say. So the question of AI aesthetics cannot be disentangled from politics, one way or the other. And yeah, it doesn't seem that this is likely to change. It's not that imagery has not been political before, but it's so much connected to the infrastructure and the way they are created, and the way that labor to value pump away from artists to companies that again employ work in the global south is such a important factor how every individual image is produced, that we cannot and should not ignore that. And the last point, maybe in all of that, we have talked about AI images as one thing, and then we have the other sort of images. But looking ahead, we could lose this distinction altogether. That's Hannes Bayo called that, with respect to texts and post-artificial texts, where still we are not there at the moment, but we might be there. That it is, we cannot make a distinction between AI generated or not, because it is always a matter of degree, because AI in machine learning is part of every step of the pipeline of production, because it is, for instance, included in all elements of Photoshop. There are some examples a few months ago where a colleague applied for a conference and found her own picture changed because there was an AI expand image tool involved in between, and it didn't just expand the image, but also opened her clothes a little bit. And again, unintended. No? That this is something that was happening in between the various production processes where AI tools are more and more a part of, and we cannot yeah, place the responsibility back to some humans with bad intentions or not, because AI and machine learning becomes part of our infrastructure, for better or worse, in all programs, in all applications. So the whole question, AI images or not, is probably becoming a historical point that we leave behind, because it's a matter of degree and not so much of category. Yeah, 6 ideas. Let's discuss together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lucas.